Preseason game number 3 is in the books, and John Wall finally got his start. Did he do enough to let us know that he's the starting point guard and not Reggie Jackson? I'm going to be talking about it all on today's Locked On Clippers.
You are Locked On Clippers, your daily Los Angeles Clippers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, sir, you are locking in with the Clips. Thank you for making Locked On Clippers the first listen of your day, your team every day. My name is Darian Vaziri. I'm your host. Going into my 18th season as a Clipper fan, I'm also a YouTuber and podcaster of my own. You can follow me on YouTube or subscribe to me on YouTube at Dime Dropper, where I go live after LA basketball games and post vlogs of attending LA sporting events, including many Clipper games, and of course do content on the NBA at large and NBA history. So for today's episode, the Clippers just finished their third preseason game, this one coming against the Minnesota Timberwolves, and also the Clippers' first game in the preseason at Staples Center or the Crypto.com Arena. So nice to see Clipper fans back in the building, 86% attendance according to ESPN. So pretty good for a preseason game. Obviously, you don't expect a sellout. But what was really the takeaway from the game, John Wall started. Ty Lue said that he was going to start Reggie Jackson in the second preseason game. And then in the third one, he was going to start John Wall and see which one he liked better because they're both vying for that spot. And I'm afraid that it's over, I think, the conversation. John Wall will be the Clippers starting point guard on opening night, in my opinion, and I'm going to tell you why. Also going to be talking about Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. How did they look, along with the other guys and the overall performance of the team? But let's start with the main takeaway. John Wall. Oh my goodness. This guy, it's not Washington level, but he is still faster than I realized. And yes, you can go at me in the comments section. You can say you were sleeping on John. Because even though I'm a big John Wall guy, I've always been a big John Wall guy, I'm thoroughly impressed with how fast he still is. He's clearly the fastest player with the ball in his hands on the Clippers still. There's no doubt about that. And he gives that element of pace that Ty Lue, that Paul George have been talking about this entire time. So we saw last night John Wall hit the Jets in transition, and not just in like a Clippers steal the ball situation on a rebound or a missed shot. Get the ball to John Wall. He pushes the pace. And there was one play where he made the defense collapse with a quick change of direction. He got the ball out to Kawhi in the corner, and Paul George ended up getting a wide open three at the top of the key, which he missed. But that was all created by John Wall's penetration and pushing of the pace. That's an element to the offense the Clippers have never had in this Kawhi Leonard, Paul George era. So for somebody to be able to push the pace and have shooters trailing him like that is such a luxury, and it's going to make the Clippers' job offensively easier. And Ty Lue has said many times, and he's 100% right about this, that the Clippers have struggled to get easy baskets and generate easy baskets when it comes to not, and I'm talking about easy baskets outside of open threes. The Clippers generate a lot of good looks from three, but the problem is when the three ball's not falling, it's really just relying on Paul George and Kawhi Leonard's mid-range brilliance or one-on-one brilliance for the Clippers to score. And a lot of teams have the issue where if they're not getting something at the rim and they're not hitting threes, where do they go? But thankfully for the Clippers, they have mid-range guys. But what can really help even more is being able to push the pace and get easier looks on the break and in transition. So John Wall is going to be able to add that element. You saw it on many occasions last night against the Timberwolves, or Sunday night if you're listening to this on Tuesday. He was brilliant, absolutely amazing, and in the second half, he was even better. He had an incredible vintage John Wall behind the back layup, meaning he put the ball behind his back and went up for the layup. There was also a nice spin move at the end of the third quarter where he was going full speed, spun over his right shoulder and flipped it up, a little finger roll. And there was another play right before that where he was isolated against Jordan McLaughlin, my favorite college player of all time, by the way, from USC. One-on-one, he was going between, Burst to his right, bank shot off the glass and one. He was absolutely electric. The only con I'd say is in the first unit, and I'm going to keep saying this. This was the reason why I wanted John to come off the bench. I don't want him to take the ball away from Kawhi and Paul George a lot. Because at the end of the day, as good of a playmaker as John Wall is, and he is the best passer probably on the team. Yeah, I'd say he's the best passer on the team. Probably the best playmaker on the team overall. The thing is, though, and I want people to understand this, it's not like John Wall's bringing up the ball to throw it to someone else to initiate or to throw somebody the ball in their spots and isolate, kind of like in the past. In today's day, you play make by being a threat to score in that pick and roll. So when John Wall gets the high ball screen or runs high pick and roll with him handling the ball, the defense can try to give John Wall a shot. If the defense is sagged off in drop coverage, the big man, they want John Wall to shoot mid-range shots. You're going to see that. You're going to see teams go under the screen, and if teams switch everything, then they're going to try to make John Wall play one-on-one, which honestly isn't a terrible thing because even though Kawhi Leonard and Paul George are better isolation players, John Wall actually still has the ability one-on-one to take guys off the dribble and get to the rim better than them. So he may be able to create some nice drive and kick looks actually when teams switch everything on us. But I still kind of want the ball in Paul George and Kawhi Leonard's hands running pick and rolls as well because they've not only improved on that so much since Ty Lue's taken over, but if teams go drop coverage on Paul George and Kawhi, they can step into threes and mid-ranges big time because their jump shots are so much better than John Wall's, and they're just better scorers. So if teams switch everything, then okay, Paul George and Kawhi isolation against a mismatch, please. So the reason why I say I still kind of want the ball in Paul and Kawhi's hands a bit more is because they're just our two best scorers, and the way teams play pick and roll these days, it forces the player who's handling the ball in those pick and roll situations to be a scoring threat, and because of that scoring threat, that's what opens up the role for the big man and the shooters in the corner. Defenses have to pick their poison. But I did see that John Wall said something in an interview, and it was actually a really, really interesting point. And he said, what I plan on doing is, initiating the offense, letting them play off the ball, and letting them get easier shots. And then in the fourth quarter, they'll have more of their legs for that. They'll have their legs on them, so they'll be able to close out the game and do what they do best. And when teams likely will switch everything in those fourth quarters, like we've seen in the past, that's going to allow Paul George and Kawhi to play isolation and dominate. It's funny. I think a lot of people say, well, they just started playing iso ball. That's what switching on screens does. That's what the Clippers are going to try to do to other teams, force them to play iso ball. And they were doing it in this first half against Minnesota last night. Totally. But that's why you bring in Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. You look at any championship team in history. Tell me that they don't have a guy or two who can score one-on-one against just about anyone. Kawhi Leonard was that guy for the Toronto Raptors. And you also had Pascal Siakam, who's a solid one-on-one player as well. And then you had Chris Middleton and Giannis from Milwaukee, Kobe and Shaq, Michael Jordan. We can keep going on in the list. You always have to have guys that can score one-on-one. And so Kawhi Leonard and Paul George are those guys for the Clippers. That's why they're two of the best scorers in the game. That's why they're here. So that's going to happen. So I really like that idea. Okay, John Wall handled the ball a little bit more in the beginning of the game. And then as the game goes on, Paul George and Kawhi start to slowly get more on the ball, more ball dominant. I just think, again, it's all about that balance. You know what I'm saying? I don't want John Wall to feel like he has to press too much, just like I said in the last episode. And I don't think he really was last night, especially when Kawhi's out of the game. When he's out there with just Paul George, then absolutely, he's the second best creator on the floor. By all means, run a lot of pick and rolls. But when they're both out there, I still would like to see John Wall, in terms of time of possession, have the ball in his hands probably just a third most. That's just my opinion, though. I can totally understand if someone else is saying, or if you're saying, I just like the ball in John Wall's hands more, initiating the offense. It's just that sometimes that results in one-pass possessions, and I would still like to see Kawhi and Paul George handling the ball a little bit and creating for others as well. And you might say, well, that takes away John Wall's value with him playing off the ball. Not in my opinion, after what I've been seeing so far. In the second half last night, John Wall hit a catch-and-shoot three with Paul George and Ivica Zubac running pick and roll, and it was beautiful. By the way, Paul George and Ivica Zubac, as well as Kawhi Leonard and Ivica Zubac, have developed really strong chemistry in the pick and roll these last 3 seasons that they've been together. So that's a really great thing about this continuity. Paul George and Ivica Zubac, Ivica Zubac and Kawhi, they've played with one another for a couple years now, and they get each other. And there were 2 straight plays where Paul and Zoo ran pick and roll, and they obviously throw 2 defenders at Paul George coming off the screen, duh. And he made these beautiful pocket passes to Zoo, who then made really good reads on the short roll, which he's gotten better at every single year. And on one of those short rolls, found John Wall for an open 3, Paul George getting the hockey assist. If John Wall can make those open 3s, I mean, god damn. The Clippers are going to be so in business because Paul George and Ivica Zubac, I love that high pick and roll action. And if John Wall can be a threat off the ball, the sky's the limit for the Clippers. And coming up, I'm going to be talking about how Kawhi Leonard looked and a really nice wrinkle I saw from Ty Lue that he's talked about in terms of Ivica Zubac's minutes and how he wants to do them and what lineups he wants to play them in. Really great stuff. Going to be talking about that coming up. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available? That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. It's really easy to create a free job post on LinkedIn. You just got to add your job in the purple #hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's time to finish the year strong and add some quality employees, the ones that fit your system and your vision. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right. So to end on John Wall's performance, he had 20 points in 20 minutes, 5 for 11 from the field, 1 for 3 from deep, and an amazing 9 of 9 from the line. So great to see him hit his free throws too. The only con, 4 turnovers. A lot of those came, or I think the majority of those came in the first half. And again, that's going to happen. He's just going to have to try to take care of the ball a little bit better, and it's preseason, so you know there's going to be some loosey-goosey tendencies and just times where, you know, you're going to make mistakes. It's the preseason. But let's talk about Kawhi. And I'm also going to be talking about Paul George and Marcus Morris Sr. And, of course, the wrinkle that Ty Lue's thrown in terms of subs. As for Kawhi Leonard, I liked what I saw again last night. He was 4 for 8 from the field. He was 0 for 3 from deep, but I think that's just a matter of getting his legs underneath him. But he had, his first basket was on a fast break. He took 2 long strides and laid it in very nicely. And then he had a mid-range jump shot going to his left where Paul George had a very well-timed screen, pull-up jump shot, looked great. And then he split defenders. I think it was D'Angelo Russell and one other defender that I forget. Went in for the one-handed dunk, so it was nice to see Kawhi have a nice dunk where he kind of just hit a little explosion and got up pretty nicely. And then my favorite of them all, ISO, left elbow, turn over the right shoulder over Anthony Edwards. Just not many people in the league make that shot consistently. And Kawhi is one of those guys, as I said before, best mid-post game in the league. I'm going to be repeating that all season as he continues to get his legs back underneath him. But Kawhi didn't play in the second half. He only played 17 minutes, but 8 points, no turnovers. Looked pretty solid on defense, better. And by the way, one of his misses, he airballed a shot in the corner. Anthony Edwards fouled him. It was a total hand checker push. So, to me, he was 4 for 7. That's just my bias talking. But it was a foul. It was a foul, make no mistake. Overall, though, Kawhi looked good, but what I saw there in terms of him not playing the second half while Paul George did and John Wall did, and by the way, Paul George and John Wall only played the third quarter. They didn't play the fourth. Tells me, though, that I don't think Ty Lue is, I'm going to be right about what I said. It's going to be a minutes restriction for Kawhi to begin the season. I don't see him playing over 30 minutes for a couple of games. So just be prepared for that. They're going to ease him back into things. And as I said, I think Paul George is going to be the best player on the Clippers the first 20 to 30 games. But by the way, the fastest way to grow this channel, the YouTube channel, is to subscribe and, of course, comment on today's pinned question. And that question is, did John Wall do enough last night against Minnesota to tell everybody he's the starting point guard? Because I think he did. And it's personally because the question I had was the fit. Is John Wall going to fit better with the second unit because he's going to be able to handle the ball more, and we need that? And then Reggie Jackson has experience playing with the starters and is a better three-point shooter, so he can be off the ball and be catch and shoot Reggie again. But I think we've run into one of those situations where John Wall is just that much better of a basketball player overall than Reggie. He's better defensively as well, strong. And he's playing with so much fire. That's what I love about him. And I've always loved that about him. He plays with so much passion and intensity. It's one of those situations where John's just better than him. And so much better that it's just, you need to start him, honestly. He may be the third best player on the team. It's looking that way if he continues to play like that. Even though it's preseason, just the way he's looking, the burst. Now, he's going to be playing against better players in the regular season and for longer stretches and tougher defenses. But I think he looks really good. And considering we're seeing the other players on the same team play against the same competition and John Wall just looks better than them, I'd assume that means he might be the third best player on the team. But, we still have to see. It's just preseason. As for the preseason and last night's game, Norman Powell didn't play. So we saw a really, really amazing bench five of Robert Covington, Nico Batum, Terrence Mann, Luke Kennard, and Reggie Jackson. And that's like a starting lineup. I mean, it's undersized for sure, but as a second unit, I mean, that is just really, really good. And it feels like maybe I said John Wall's presence on the team or Marcus Morris's presence on the team feels a bit redundant. Maybe I was wrong, and maybe Norman Powell's presence on the team feels a bit redundant now that we have John Wall. Because it's going to just take the ball away from Reggie, and it's going to make Luke Kennard play less. And I think Norman Powell, I said he's going to probably be the third best player on the team. But considering how good John Wall is, that was something I talked about in the last episode. Are they going to be able to balance that out? Now, I think Reggie Jackson and Norman Powell, if they play together in the second unit, can split those pick and roll duties, ball handling duties. And both of them are equally good off the ball. And I don't know if one is better than the other in pick and roll. I'd say maybe Reggie may be a little better because he's more used to being a point guard and passing the ball. And Norm is kind of a combo guard that has really played the two for most of his career. But I think that has a better chance of blending in well now that I think about it, because John Wall wants the ball in his hands, and he's good with the ball in his hands. So maybe that's just going to be the case. John Wall's going to start. I really think if I had to place a bet right now, John Wall's starting. So we'll see what happens when Norman Powell comes back. Again, it's just you bring Norman Powell in, who gets less minutes? One guy's going to have to get less minutes. It's going to be either Kennard or Terrence, or maybe even Reggie. As for the wrinkle that Ty Lue threw in, which I really enjoyed, and he talked about this, and I think it's genius, actually. He says, I'm going to take Zubac out kind of early in the first quarter, so instead of coming out at like the 4-minute mark or 3-minute mark, which he used to, he's going to come out around the 6-minute mark, and either Nico Batum or Robert Covington is going to come in as that small ball 5. Last night, it was Nico Batum. So then you have a lineup of John Wall, Marcus Morris, Paul George, and Kawhi Leonard, and Nico Batum. Everyone's going to be able to switch. And you saw the havoc that was causing for Minnesota. The Clippers were up 10 points after the first quarter, 34-24. And it was a large reason was because of that switch everything unit. And by the way, I have to mention that Rudy Gobert did not play in the game last night. So it was Naz Reid starting alongside Karl-Anthony Towns at the 4 and 5 spots. And obviously they don't have the personnel to switch everything like the Clippers do, even though they were trying it a little bit. And Karl-Anthony Towns was actually holding his own on defense better than I thought on the perimeter. The only thing about Karl-Anthony Towns is he actually played well in the second half. In the third quarter, he started hitting threes. But when the Clippers switch everything and he wants to just start his move at the three-point line, facing up against athletic wing players with good lateral ability, that takes away his size advantage outside of just being able to shoot over somebody. And again, I'm always going to say it, that I prefer big men playing inside out, not outside in. So, again, the game has changed. I get it. But there's a reason why a big man has not won the championship as the lead dog since Shaq. And it's part of it's because of the rules, legalizing blatant zones and also the hand checking and making it easier for perimeter players, freedom of movement, landing space, everything of that nature. But it's also because players aren't posting up as much anymore. But when you see the ones that do, Nikola Jokic, for example, And you might say, well, he can shoot threes too. That's not the point. That's not what he was doing against the Warriors while he was dominating. He was dominating in the low post. And then he can stretch out. And that's why he's so great. Karl Anthony Towns was so great at Kentucky in the post. He got to the NBA, started shooting threes, and I was like, oh my God, if he puts it all together, he's going to be insanely unstoppable. He could average 30 points a game. Now he's kind of fallen in love with that three, and because he's so efficient at it, the analytics probably encourages him to take 10 a game. Last night he shot 6 and made 3, 50%. Amazing. But at the end of the day, a lot of these are bailouts for the defense because we switch everything and you're not posting up a 6'8 guy. Okay, shoot a contested three while we're getting better shots. So that's the Wolves side of things. I don't want to go too far into them because there's so many good things to take from the Clippers, even though they lost. And by the way, the reason they lost is because the kids were playing in the fourth quarter. It was just Terrence Mann, Jason Preston, Brandon Boston, Moussa Diabate, Amir Coffey, guys that have played only 3 years or less in the league. Terrence Mann, going into his fourth season now, was the longest tenured player, and he was even pulled out the last 2 minutes. And shout out to Austin Rivers. I didn't even realize he was on the Timberwolves. Austin Rivers, Bryn Forbes, these guys ended the game well, and Brandon Boston Jr. missed a three to try to win the game. But that's not a big deal. The result is not what matters. It's really the process. And so, as far as the Ivica Zubac thing, playing that small ball unit for the end of the first quarter, and then Zubac comes in with the second unit to play against second-string bigs. And it's a really good idea because I think Zoo can dominate second-string bigs. And when Zoo came into the game, back into the game, I should say, with that second unit, he was so great. He had a beautiful jump hook with the right hand. He even had a jump hook with the left hand. And I think one of the weaknesses of Zoo's game has been his left hand offensively. And to see that, and then he had a nice block as well. I mean, and there was also a play where he switched out and guarded somebody on the perimeter. I forget who it was. Great defense, though. I think it was drop coverage. He stepped up on D'Lo, put a hand up, and he almost airballed. Zubac in his minutes was really solid, in my opinion. 8 points, 8 rebounds, 3 of those offensive rebounds, 4 of 5 from the field, 2 blocks. So the only downside to this is I don't think Zoo's going to really... Like, if I were Zoo, I'd be a little disappointed because it seems like even though the Clippers only have him as their true center that we know is going to play, he's not going to really get a minutes increase like I thought he may. Because I've been talking about how if he got 30 minutes a game, he would average a double-double with ease. I think he's going to still be around that 23, 24 minutes a game mark. And he's probably going to average around 9 and 8. And it's going to be better for the team. And that's where just being a professional comes in and just sacrificing. Sacrifice. But I think it's a really genius idea to have Zoo play against those second-string bigs because he's going to be great. And it's nice to have that size off the bench. And then you can still go with that small ball unit and switch everything, which the Clippers did. There was one unit where they had Nico Batum, Marcus Morris Sr., Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, and Robert Covington in at the same time. And it was just a nightmare for the Wolves switching everything. But to close out, there's a certain somebody I owe an apology to. And I'm going to apologize to him, as well as telling you some good things I saw from the young kids at the end of the game coming up. The MLB playoffs are underway, and the Dodgers, your LA Dodgers, if you're a Dodger fan, listen to this. I assume many of you are because this is a LA podcast, should place your bets on the Dodgers to win the World Series, even though they don't have Walker Buehler. They are minus 218 for Game 1 against the Padres on Tuesday the 11th. Go and place your bets, and to do that, you already know where to go. It's BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for all your baseball, football, basketball info this season. You can find all the latest player developments, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles there on every game you can find across all sports. We're also only a little over a month away from the World Cup, the big shebang. Go place your bets on that as well. Going to be a lot of betting going on at that time. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. Head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, to end it off, briefly, I'm going to talk about Paul George, a guy that I owe an apology to. Spoiler alert, it's Marcus Morris, and the young kids that played in the fourth quarter. So, by the way, if I didn't say it already, the final score was 119 to 117 in favor of Minnesota. But again, not a big deal. Paul George, I was so impressed with how he looked against the Blazers, but he didn't have the best game. He had 14 points, made all his free throws, 6 of 6, which is great. 3 for 10 from the field and 2 for 8 from 3. Notice anything? When I made the episode, 3 major questions about Paul George, or 3 things that can hold him back from being a champion this year. One of them was settling because he doesn't get calls. But he didn't even try to go to the basket in this game, except for like once or twice. And again, his first 4 shots were threes. He ended up shooting 30%. What have I been saying, Clipper Nation? When he starts out shooting threes to start the game and starts missing, that's how he gets out of rhythm. I like when he gets a mid-range or something at the basket first, or a free throw, because then he can see the ball go in. Like, it's all rhythm for shooters. And sometimes, scorers, even though they're more than just shooters in Paul's case. But Paul George, for how amazing he is, has too many games where he's just inefficient. And I think that's a large reason because of it. And it's because he's such a good three-point shooter that people are like, increase the volume. It's the math. If you shoot 40% from 3, shoot 10 of them a game. I agree, but I think there's a strategic way to do this. And it's more of a rhythm way instead of just a set, all right, I'm going to shoot 10 threes tonight because that's what the analytics say. I think you got to start out being aggressive. To the basket, mid-range. 3 for 10 is fine in the preseason. But I don't want Paul George to shoot 80% of his shots from deep. I mean, that's just not it for a 6'8" athletic wing. He went to the basket once, and he didn't finish very well. But one time, and I think he may have gotten fouled, but it's like, come on, man. Although I did see great stuff in the second half. He had some solid defensive moments, some lackadaisical defensive moments. Like I remember one play where the Clippers could switch everything, and he was like, just switching basically everything, even certain unnecessary off-ball actions, and he kind of just got blown by because he was roaming too much. But again, one play, preseason, not a big deal. Overall, I still stand by what I said. Paul George is going to be the best player on the Clippers, in my opinion, in the first 20 to 30 games. And he also had an amazing quote last night after the game where he said Kawhi is the best player on the team. Now, he's said stuff like that before, but he said, like, I'm a number 2. He basically said, for the first time in his Clipper tenure, he's better than me. For lack of better terms, he basically said he's better than me. That is huge. And it puts a huge smile on my face, actually, because I've been saying I think Kawhi's that guy, and I think when sometimes you don't have defined roles, it can get a little tricky, even though when in the course of a game, like to close out a game, you go with the hot hand and who's in rhythm. That's a thing for sure. It shouldn't be just one guy should always get it. But when push comes to shove, you should have one guy you rely on a little more than the others, in my opinion. And that should be Kawhi for the Clippers. And for Paul George to acknowledge that, when he literally looks like the best player on the floor for the Clippers on so many occasions, is awesome. That's what sacrifice is all about. And if Paul George really buys into being like a true number 2, even though I don't think his PPG will be that much below Kawhi's at all, then there's no reason why Paul George isn't good enough to be a number 2 on a championship team. I mean, absolutely. Like, Klay Thompson, as great as he is, I don't think he's a better basketball player than Paul George. And he's been a number 2 on multiple championship teams. Andrew Wiggins was just a number 2 on a championship team. There's no reason Paul George shouldn't be. Chris Middleton, for God's sake. Paul George should absolutely be able to do this. And for him to even say that is so big. But Marcus Morris Sr., I owe an apology to. Because this guy looks amazing. He got by somebody off the dribble yesterday, stopped on a dime and pulled up for a mid-range, and that's because he had him worrying about the fact that he was about to get to the rim. It wasn't just stand still, jab step, pull over somebody. He tried to drive, and because he had his man worrying about it and, in defensive stance, he rose up and stopped on a dime. Beautiful. And then, not only is he making his threes, I mean, he was 3 for 4 from 3, and we know Senior can have those efficient nights from 3. 5 for 7 from the field. He also had a dunk, and his lateral movement on defense was great in that switch everything unit. So even though I said he's the weak link, if the Clippers go with that 5, Rocco, Kawhi, Paul George, Batum, even Terrence in there, Senior is the one that if I were the other team, I'd say, okay, let's get him on this. Let's get our best player to get him, Senior guarding him, and go at Senior. But there was one play where he guarded D'Angelo Russell. He got away with a little hand check, but he slid his feet well and forced an air ball. If Marcus Morris Sr. continues to play like this, he's going to make me look the fool, and I'm going to apologize, and I'm already starting to apologize for the trade stuff because he looks incredible, and that's the case. Norman Powell may be the odd man out because Luke Kennard's shooting is just too ridiculous. He needs to be out there. Yesterday he played again, and he was 3 for 3 from 3. The guy's like, he's so ridiculous, man. He's a loaded gun. And Marcus Morris, what he offers that Norman doesn't is size. He's a 6'8" guy. Even though he's not the best laterally, if his quickness has gotten a little better, his athleticism is back a little bit because of his knees feeling good, then oh boy. If he can get back to that 21st season with the Clippers kind of defense when he came, and rebounds, that's the biggest thing. He had 4 rebounds, and the big reason why he didn't rebound well enough in the last couple of seasons is because I kept saying he can't get off the ground like that anymore. Well, he's got a little bit more spring in his step now, and that can change everything because the one weakness of the small ball unit for the Clippers is going to be rebounding. We don't have a guy over 6'10" out there, so it's got to be gang rebounding. And Marcus Morris Sr. being able to grab a couple more of those because he's got more burst in his legs can change everything. So Marcus Morris looks really good right now. Really good. Maybe the best player so far in the 2 preseason games in terms of relative to his expectation. And then as for the young kids, amazing stuff from Diabate again. Really versatile on defense, super active on the glass. Got a really nice block on a fast break as well. He was awesome. And then, 8 minutes for Musa, 2 points, 2 blocks. Reggie Jackson, besides some moments where he over-dribbled, like immensely, and I think John also had some moments of over-dribbling as well, but Reggie mainly, here's my opinion. If you're going to take 14 seconds to get into your offensive set and have your first high pick and roll, or should I say, have the first on-ball screen set to really attack, at least move the ball a little bit in those 14 seconds prior to getting into it. Because if one guy's just dribbling for 14 seconds and then they start running high pick and roll, no one else is touching the ball, and it's wasted energy, and the defense doesn't have to work. At least when you swing the ball, you can catch the defense moving a little bit, and guys can go off the dribble as if guys close out too hard, and you can get that option as well. And if nothing happens, you're just passing the ball to pass the ball. At least when the ball when the ball gets to the guy who's going to initiate the play in the pick and roll, at least everybody has touched the ball. So then everybody's a little bit more in rhythm. So that's just my opinion. Less dilly-dallying on the ball is needed there. And Reggie has a tendency to dilly-dally on the ball. And that's why he may be a better fit for the second unit. 11 points, 3 rebounds, and 3 assists for Reg. 3 for 8 from the field, 3 for 6 from 3, though he still had some nice Reggie Jackson shots. Terrence Mann, really solid as well. 10 points, 4 for 7, 1 for 1 from 3, and great energy on defense. And then Nico Batum and Robert Covington, I thought they were really solid in their minutes. Nico played 13 minutes, 5 points, 7 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal, 2 for 4 from the field. And then Robert Covington in 24 minutes, 4 for 8, 11 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, and 2 blocks. The only thing with Rocco is he takes some threes that he just doesn't need to take, like that they're not wide open. Threes that Marcus Morris Sr. takes, which, again, he can take because he makes those contested ones. But there are some where Rocco will just get the ball on a swing, and it's not even like he's open or a guy's even closing out like that, and he just throws it up there, and that's just like, we can do without those. But overall, great stuff to take from the game. Clippers' versatility on defense, great. John Wall looks amazing. I think he's going to start. And Kawhi Leonard looks better, guys. He looks a lot better. And that wrinkle that Ty Lue threw in with Ivica Zubac playing the first 5 minutes, then coming out, Clippers go and switch everything, small ball, and then Zoo playing with the second unit to play pick and roll with Reggie with shooters, or it could be John, but I assume it's going to be Reggie off the bench, is a great look. Final score is 119-117 in favor of Minnesota. The Clippers have one more preseason game, and that will be coming up against the Nuggets on Wednesday, the 12th. So we're going to be obviously having an episode for that. Also going to be having an episode tomorrow, of course, because it's 5 days a week here at Locked On Clippers. And I'm going to go even more depth about stuff from the game because I feel like I just rushed this. I feel like there were so many things I said and I could have gone in more depth about certain things. So I will be doing a little bit more in depth about the game, or going more in depth about the game. But by the way, remember to answer the question for today. Did John Wall seal his starting point guard spot? Let me know in the comments. And by the way, got to subscribe to Locked On Clippers. Let's get it up to 800, guys. We can surpass the Locked On Spurs, and we got to be monetized. We're one of only 2 channels alongside the Spurs to not be monetized. Let's get that done. And if you want to follow me on this entire journey, at Dime Dropper Pod on Twitter and Instagram, and of course subscribe to my own YouTube channel, Dime Dropper. I'm going to be releasing season previews for various teams with other fans and content creators, so please check that out. I also released an episode recently with one of my mentors on youth sports, so check that out as well. Thank you guys. You already know how it is. The age-old proverb, go Clippers, John Wall. John Wall. That's the takeaway today, ladies and gents. Be excited for number 2, or should I say number 11, because he's excited for you.